I was born dead. My mother was due to give birth in November, and me and my twin sister, we were born 2 months premature, but we were both dead. They had to do an emergency C-section in Cleveland, Ohio, at the Rainbow Babies Hospital, and my sister was put in an incubator. We were 3 pounds each, like in the palm of a hand, and we're just miracle babies. I don't remember much where I was located, but I know my parents moved around a lot, and I never knew where I was going, and I never had any friends or anything, but my childhood was not normal. I remember my father always just doing his own thing and my mom doing her own thing. We were never together, and we didn't have a close relationship, really. We pretty much were on our own. I lived on I had to raise myself. My father was a hustler, and he was a businessman, and he owned many businesses. He loved laying carpet and flooring, and he loved carpentry. And my mother, she was a model, and she always was in Canada selling products, and she was a salesperson. So I never really spent a lot of time with my parents growing up, and I never really knew who they were. But my grandparents were my everything. They were almost like my mom and dad. They took care of me and showed me unconditional love and showed me how to live life in the country. So I learned to be a country girl. They always had love in their hearts and very welcoming. They gave me the light to my life. And so I remember when I moved to a small town called Geneva, Ohio. It was a 2-story across an elementary, and that's where I went to school. I walked to school every day. And I remember skipping kindergarten because I said I was too smart for my age. But I was really aware of my surroundings, and I was already at a point in my life where I was in my own little world. And at that house in Geneva, I remember my grandma's dad living with us, and my grandparents were there almost every day, helping taking care with him while my mom and dad were never home, and they were never around. So my siblings and I weren't close at all. We all did our own thing. We were individuals. We got along, we just never really understood what family was, or we never really understood what being close was, or support or anything. We were just raised like wild animals. And my twin sister and I, we were always dancing and performing, and we loved entertaining. And I remember doing the talent shows at school, and we were always class clowns, and we always were laughing and just always the life of the schoolroom. And we would bring in our animals to the schoolroom, like dogs, and we just had no rules, and we were pranksters. I remember meeting up with my sister at a certain time of day during school just to mess with the teachers, to switch places on them. And we did that all the time. And she got caught because she accidentally wrote her name on the paper, on my paper. So we had fun in that area. And then I remember my father wanted to move into a farm and have cows and horses, and he wanted to get away from the small town of Geneva and move out into the country, the middle of nowhere. I was 9 years old, so I moved there in the end of 4th grade, the beginning of 5th grade. I was 9 years old. And I remember going to a racetrack, and I was climbing up the grandstands all the way up to the tippy top, and I slipped on a paper cup, and I fell in between the grandstands, and I landed on my head when I landed. And my father, he jumped down after me to try to catch me from hitting the ground, but he just got whacked in the head anyway. And I remember just laying there on the ground and being just fine, and I was like breathing and everything. And the paramedics came and they put me in the ambulance, and I had a concussion and I forgot everything from there, but I had a severe jaw injury and a concussion and broken ribs and my femur bone. I don't remember, but it was a really bad fall, but I survived, and it was like, let's move to the farm. So the farm we moved to was in Dorset, Ohio. It was like 30 miles off the Pennsylvania border. So it's very east in Ohio. And it was about 40 minutes from town. There was no stop signs, no stoplights. There was no lines on the road. It was like just a world of make it how you make it. Like freedom, open. There's no rules. There's no cops. It was just completely your own world. My road was called Tower Road, and it was the most dangerous road because it was narrow and it was very windy. And there was train tracks on that road that didn't have the railroad lights. So you never knew when there was a train coming in the dark if you couldn't hear or you couldn't see it coming. It was just a ran down railroad. And my house was at the corner of a main route called 193. And semis and cars would fly through there. So you had to be very careful. The people there were almost like mountain men. They looked very gringy. They had beards. They did a lot of drinking. They did a lot of drugs. It was a very poor town. There was no gas station. There was no stores. There was no civilization of any kind. And the neighbors were all the same. Everyone was the same. But we ended up having a farm, so that made us a little different. We built our barns and garages with the Amish. So we had a lot of Amish neighbors, and they would do a lot of projects with us. And soon enough, I started babysitting the little Amish babies and going to like Amish events and little parties. And I would ride in their little buggies, and it was a hell of an experience. I remember going to the Amish houses and seeing how they live, and I was interested in it because it was so valuable, and I just liked how they lived. The Amish lived a very great life. They were strong and hardworking, and they respected me, and everyone respected each other. But my neighborhood was completely opposite. You didn't get respected, and you didn't get treated kindly. It was like a dog-eat-dog world. I remember playing in the streets and just having my own freedom. I did 4-H, and I had a cow that I raised as a very little baby, and I had to chase it around in the pasture every morning and catch it. And I had pigs and horses and goats and bunnies and dogs, and my mom wanted a pet zoo, like a pet store kind of, so she would always buy these exotic animals. So we had a farm outside and we had a farm inside, and we bred wiener dogs, dash hounds, because we had a very rare one that was called a dapple, and that's worth a lot of money in that town of that breed of dog. So we sold wiener dogs. My mom had like guinea pigs and porcupines, like birds, snakes, turtles, frogs, ferrets. I had all the animals. So it was really fun. That was a fun thing. Exciting to come home to see animals and have something that's lovable. So one day things changed. My mom got in a severe accident. One day we were all playing on the trampoline, and we were just bouncing each other up really high. And my mom was sitting Indian style on the trampoline holding my baby brother. He was probably like 2, I would say, 2 or 3, something like that. And all of a sudden, my brother that was older, he got sprung so far up in the air and he crash landed right on her head. And it caused her whole neck and her back and everything to just snap, and she never had her memory ever again for a long time. So she forgot about us children. She forgot about everything. Therefore, I had to go to the farm and be the mother and the housewife of the household. I grew up overnight. So therefore, my childhood at that point was no longer gonna happen like a normal, happy childhood. I remember having to take care of all my siblings and taking care of my father. When he would go for work, I would have to make his lunches and cook dinner and prepare for breakfast, do the dishes, clean, do laundry. I had to be like the one to keep everything in order and just mature and become wise overnight. I can say that I did not have the American traditional lifestyle. My grandpa built his farm from the ground up, and I remember when I was like 4 or 5 years old being at the property. I remember my uncle and cousin asking if I wanted to go on a 4-wheeler ride to the barn. And the barn was located on like 5 acres. It was a huge property. And I remember just saying yes like a little girl, and my sister was with me. So we just both got on the 4-wheeler thinking it was just going to be a fun little ride.